Above Average Joe Scott with Brewmaster Paul Kozlowski. I've known Paul since, 2003, 2004?
Yeah, I was 19 and you were 21.
Yeah.
So that's, I don't even want to say it anymore. But yeah, probably, 16 years.
Wow, I was trying to do the math. My math is terrible. And I was like, what is the number? And I was entering Plum Tomatoes as you were leaving Plum Tomatoes, pretty much.
Yeah, there was that that interlude. I had just trained James, I think.
Yeah.
And then you would come back. You would work there previously and then come back.
Yeah, I was previously a busboy, and then I came back because I finished college, and you were pretty much going to college, right? I believe, or.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I was going into college, and then I was kind of coming back part-time, but I was already in Hoboken, and I was going to get my jobs there and do internships and whatnot.
And for people who don't know, you went to Stevens College, right?
Yep, that's right.
And what did you study again?
So chemical engineering, and I had a minor in biochemical engineering, which is precisely what I needed to learn how to do this.
Yeah, and where did this idea come from where you want to start a brewing? I kind of remember, I don't remember the year, you might remember better than me, but like I know it's either your birthday or Christmas. I was like, you were talking about brewing, and I got you one of those beer kits from like Bed Bath & Beyond.
That's right, yeah, it was a 1-gallon kit, and it was an American Pale Ale, and then it was 2014.
Yeah.
And a friend, mutual friend of ours, Michael Shields, and I were talking about brewing and how much fun that would be, and then I got the kit, and then I said, all right, well, let's give it a shot, and it came out pretty good, and then we found like another kit, and then eventually you found some brew stores, and then I've been doing this on and off for about 7 years, since 2014, but this year is different. Yeah, this year I am going off. Right, instead of following a set recipe, instead of simply going off of kits, I'm trying to take it to the next level, and I'm trying to add to the diversity that is the beer world.
Yeah, and what were some of your struggles first brewing? What did you kind of walls did you hit along the way to be where you're at today?
Yeah, mostly it was just ignorance. You almost get into your own success, right? Because it's not very difficult. It's one of those things that it's easy to learn, difficult to master, and so it's very easy to produce a palatable IPA or a decent Kolsch. It's a lot more difficult to sort of stamp your style on it, and you really need to know about the brewing process. And the more risks you take, the more you realize that you don't really know the chemistry at all. So that was really probably the reason why it took me 7 years to get to this point was you didn't want to get out of your comfort zone because you knew you could produce good beer. You knew that if you added an element you weren't familiar with, that you can ruin a perfectly good batch, and that was a month of time that you wasted, and you didn't want to do that. So that's really. That was really the inhibitor, the being unwilling to take those risks.
Yeah, definitely. And at first it was like you did this as a hobby for fun. What was this for you, and what is it now?
Oh, I mean, it's a hobby all the way. But I think before it was sort of like an on my own time, and now I'm bringing it to the point where each month I want to brew at least one batch. I have at this point two buckets that are two fermenters going at the same time, but I'm trying to come up with a recipe every month, and it's a pretty aggressive schedule, right? Like before it's just like, all right, if I have an off day and I'm just looking for something to do that's inside the house, all right, I'll just go buy something and get a batch. Now I have to actually maintain a calendar to make sure that I can brew all that I want to brew this year.
Definitely. Now that you have like a brand behind you, I know for a couple of years you didn't have a name, and now this year we were like sitting down like maybe months ago, and we were like, oh hey, I came up with this name, Backstory Brewing. Where did that come from, and what influenced you to kind of put a name behind what you're making? So what we were talking about?
Long story short, where Backstory Brewing came from,
Yes.
had a bunch of different names before, and Reader's Digest version was, I want to be able to explain why I came up with the beer that I did. I was inspired by a Philadelphia brewery in Ardmore, Tired Hands, and they made tremendously good beer. Like they took risks, like they really it was fantastic stuff. But they always gave it these crazy names, which fit their style. So I always knew to go to Tired Hands. But then if you asked me to recall what I bought or what it tasted like, it was very hard because there was no story behind it. There was nothing there's no narrative sense to it of why they created this beer. So I wanted to try to explore the opposite of saying I chose these ingredients for a certain reason, and what am I trying to piece together?
Definitely. Let's go to why everybody's here today. Let's try out this above average ale, and then we'll talk about what influenced you about making this and what went behind this.
Oh yeah, I got my book here, and we'll go through the list.
So I'm drinking from the Rockaway Brewing Company glass.
Let's put that in there.
I knew that was going to happen. That's why I brought a rag, a little towel.
And so that's partially the fault of the brewer there, whoever bottled this thing. Really messed it up. Yeah.
I was like, because the Belgian that I opened up yesterday that you made had a lot of head too. Why does that happen, Paul?
All right, that's a very good question. So protein is a very big reason why you have what's right here is known as head. So this is an Oktoberfest style, and we'll get more into that later, but it's very important for Oktoberfest beers to have this tall head, and the reason is because you usually drink a liter of it, and you have those big German beer steins. Now, this acts basically like insulation foam. So you don't want all of that flavor and all of the temperature just kind of sort of just go up into the air.
Yeah.
So by having this large head, it'll stay for a good 15 minutes. So when I brewed with the protein, it actually helps create this head, which really, makes the beer taste better and allows it to sit a little bit longer, but also it's sort of in that Oktoberfest style.
Yeah, I actually had a question based upon the protein because I was going to talk about the beer. Is this your first time putting protein in the beer? Or?
Yeah, so all beers will have protein, and you can actually unlock proteins. The Belgian Chapelle's protein actually came from the grain itself. It's known as decoction, and basically you take a little bit of that grain, and then you boil it, and then it basically bursts those grain particles, and then you get everything out of it instead of just the sugars. And so that includes the protein. But this, I explicitly added whey protein because as a tribute to your work as a wrestler.
Yes, let's get to the backstory of the above average ale. You came to me saying, Joe, I'm thinking about making a beer for you. What do you want? And I like to drink beer like Paul does. I love the Sam Adams Oktoberfest, so I'm like, if it's going to be above average, it's got to be similar to Oktoberfest or Amber, and that's kind of what you did with this beer. You said it's Scott's ale?
So yeah, it's actually a combination of things. So what makes this an Oktoberfest beer is that I use the Pilsner malts that are used for the Munich Oktoberfest beers, and then I use the hops. It uses Hallertau hops and Tettnang hops. They have a special category known as noble hops, and that is very particular to German style beers, the Oktoberfest style beers. But I used the ale was a Scotch ale yeast. A Scotch ale yeast. And so what I would normally use to brew a Scotch ale, I put into this Oktoberfest ale, so it's sort of a cross.
I say, let's try the beer. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, sure thing.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Past 5 now.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's actually really good. That's kind of what I expect from a taste of Oktoberfest. Might be a little bit cloudier than the Sam Adams one.
Yeah.
But I like it. Why does it taste a little bit cloudier?
Well, the reason it is cloudier is I don't do any kind of filtration. Any beers. I mean, whatever's in that mash tun sort of goes into the beer. Whereas Oktoberfest, what they'll do is they'll chill the beer down, and then when it gets cold, all that sediment sort of falls to the bottom. It's called cold crashing, and so they won't. That it may still be technically unfiltered, right? In order to filter it, it would actually have to go through a physical filter. But you can cold crash the beer, and then you can pass it through. But I have no such process like that because it's difficult for a home brewer to do, and because you lose a lot of good flavor that way.
Yeah. And when you homebrew, like I've seen your follow his page on Instagram at Backstory Brewing. Do you have an underscore in there, I believe?
Backstory_brewing, yeah.
Yes, you'll see his ingredients that he put in the above average yield and the future brews that he's making. Also, where was it? Oh, also you see the stove and the buckets that he used. He's not using the big ones that you kind of see when you go to Sam Adams Brewers or maybe your local breweries. He's not using those big metal ones. He's using an actual bucket and a stove to make his home brew.
Yeah, small time operation. That's partly because of the place that I live in now, but also I do like, even if I do have the space for something larger, I always want to go back to those roots because that's, you're in the kitchen, you know what I mean? Like you're basically cooking something up, rather than just going through a process and just making beer like everyone else does. So I'll always have a soft spot for on the kitchen or just sort of a tabletop method.
Definitely. And what's the next stuff for you? I know you were like working on your hipster kangaroo ale again.
Hipster kangaroo ale, yep, that's going to be made. It's going to be ironically hopped, which means it's going to be dry hopped for a very short period of time. Hopefully that draws out the aroma that of Citra and they call them the big three of American hops: the Citra, Chinook, and Cascade, especially. And it'll draw out that flavor and aroma that you're used to, but it won't actually be very bitter. So it's a small hop, which is hence the hipster kangaroo. And then I'm adding lavender because that's a bougie thing to add, and I think that it'll sort of offset the otherwise
the,
overpowering
Arcadia thingy. Oh, I'm saying it wrong. The acai.
Oh, acai. Oh no, that's May. So I got acai. That's the berry that's in oat milk, and that's my May brew is going to be liquid yoga chick, and then that's going to be oats, brown sugar, and acai. So it's like a granola bowl. It's like a playa bowl. So. And
what's your line is going to be? Like kind of like when you're thinking Backstory Brewing, you're just going to do. Are you gonna have like a signature lager or a pilsner or something like that? What's going to be your signature drink? You think?
I mean, I guess
when you make your recipe, because you're ready. You were telling me you're working on your recipe, but what's going to be your staple?
That's a good question. My default staple is actually a cider, so I make.
I was hoping to get into cider. I'm glad that you mentioned it. Like, you made cider for my wedding. You made cider a bunch of times, and it kind of is your staple, I believe, because it's one of the best ciders out there. Not to be biased or anything like that, but it is very good.
Yeah, thank you. And that's part of just it being a homebrew. I think that you can take more liberties, and you can you have advantages that that commercial brewers don't have. So I'm able to use black tea, and then so that might be a little bit difficult for commercial brewers. And so it's basically I'll take regular apple juice, just kind of the whatever you buy at the store, and then I'll add cranberry juice or pomegranate juice depending on the recipe. And then I will cold brew tea and then make it very concentrated and then sort of add that to the mix. And it comes out very well.
Yeah.
It not only is there, it's no sugar, right? And that to me is one of the, and that's really why the homebrewer has an advantage for that. A lot of people like dry ciders. And
yeah, not me.
but I think dry is synonymous with like puckering sweet, or not sweet, but it's very puckering, and it's not pleasant some of the times. So I use that tea to sort of mellow it out.
Yeah, it definitely like it's sweet enough, like, and you don't get that dry taste. It's sometimes could be also refreshing as well too.
Yeah, and it really what it comes down to is you need a way, if you're going to homebrew a cider, and this is what I learned, you really have to find a way to mask the tartness, because what commercial cideries will do is they'll add the sugar afterwards. They'll kill off the yeast, force carbonate it, and then add sugar. I can't do that. I rely on my yeast to be alive in order to carbonate the ciders for me. So that means it eats all the sugar, which means there's zero in there. So if you take apple juice and you remove all the sugar, it becomes very tart. And so the only way to cut that tart was to add the tea to sort of smooth out that flavor. And so that's how I got to the recipe that I got.
Yeah, and you recently also made a sour. You've been working on sours, but that's kind of a harder process or easier process for you?
I was hopefully I didn't get lucky, but knock on wood, that recipe first time out came out very well, and I'm looking to expand and improve on it. So it's a raspberry sour, and I use the kettle brewing method, which basically means you spike it with a lactobacillus bacteria first, and then that's the same kind of bacteria they use for yogurt, so that sours the beer. And then you boil that, and then you kill off that bacteria, and then you introduce the Saccharomyces, which is the brewer's yeast that will convert sugars into alcohol. It's difficult because now you need to sterilize, right? You need to keep things sterile for a longer period of time. Like, you have to basically transfer, saying like, okay, lactobacillus, now it's your turn to grow. It's like, okay, now you got to stop growing, and now you yeast, now it's your turn to grow. So you really need to, you gotta, there's a balance, but it's all fundamental, right? I mean, it's the same fundamental process. So as long as you keep your powder dry and you sort of stick to the fundamentals, it's not much harder, to be honest. Also, you don't have to deal with hops. The sour that I dealt with was just simply raspberries, and I didn't bother hopping it, and it wasn't necessary.
What's like the difference between brewing beer and brewing cider? Mainly, the main difference would be the apple juice, or do you use the same kind of similar hops, or?
Well, from a brewer's perspective, the easiest thing is that the cider, you don't need to mash it. So there's a whole science. In order to get beer, you need to take this grain, and then the grain has to be malted first, which is a process that I don't even get into. Someone gives me malt, and I buy the malt. You take the grain, and you basically trick it into thinking that it's going to grow into a stalk or whatever. When that happens, there's enzymes inside that start turning it into simple sugars. The fundamental difference is that yeast cannot eat carbohydrates. They can't eat starches. They can eat simple sugars. So for beer, you need to convert that starch into simple sugars, and you need to mash in order to do it. You keep it at a certain temperature, and those enzymes work at their optimal level, and then now you can actually taste your mash get sweeter and sweeter as time goes on. Apple juice, you don't need to do that because it's all simple sugars. So you don't have to heat it or anything. You might want to boil it to give off any, but if it's pasteurized already, there's no bacteria. So you can go to the store, you can get the apple juice, you just dump it in, throw in bacteria, or you could throw in the baker's yeast or the brewer's yeast, and you just call it a day.
Yeah, it's almost like set it and forget it, almost.
Yeah. It's easier than kit, really.
Yeah.
You just throw in the apple juice, you throw in the yeast, and then you just make sure everything's clean, and that's all you need.
What do you see for the future of Backstory Brewing? Do you want to see it in a bottle on tap? You want to see it in the stores? Or are you just happy giving it to your family and friends?
So right now, I think the next logical step for me is there is a really great brewery nearby called Sunken Silo, and they have like little trial batches where they'll let homebrewers go in and experiment their things.
That's awesome.
They even will say, if you make enough of this, we'll put it on tap and see how it goes. It's never been about, I don't know if I would go commercial, because if you make a craft beer, like you make like a specialty beer, it's very difficult to make money off of it. Like you can have it be popular, but like even like the brewers like Arrogant Bastard and like these other like high-end brewers, they'll make special releases. It's difficult, and you see the prices. It reflects how difficult it is to make commercially this like unique beer. But I think I would love to do that, and I think I have to bite the bullet and start going into some competitions, throwing it in there, and just seeing how I do versus other
competitions.
Oh, there's two reasons why I haven't done competitions yet. One, my ego bruises like a peach. Second reason is that this would not compete at all, because it's a Scotch ale yeast, it's an Oktoberfest style, and it's very like you have to you should make a Oktoberfest or you should make a Scotch ale, and so I like this cross contamination. But I do need to at some point see how I stack up with other people, and really more importantly, like get that feedback, right? Like I'll talk to the winner, who's not going to be me, and you talk you talk to them and say like, like, what is your process? And then you get into the technical details on like saying like, oh well, you got to keep your temperatures tighter, or you got to like you got to allow it to ferment longer. Some of these people, they'll ferment their beers for like 3 months. I'll only do it for 2 weeks, because at that point the sugar's been converted, and how much time does the yeast need to attenuate? Some would argue it's months, but I'm trying to I'm also going for as many recipes as I can. So
yeah, definitely.
I don't necessarily want to sit and wait for that long.
What influenced you to make this beer for me and
this? Yeah, we gotta talk. Yeah,
we gotta talk about that.
You.
I feel like we touched about a lot of topics, but we haven't really talked much about what's the backstory behind.
For that, let me read you a story. So this is my this is my recipe book. Kelly got this for me, and for my 35th birthday. Yep, Kelly McKinney. She's got her own crafts working back there.
Mention that.
Oh yeah. So she has Watson and Loki. She is a master crafter, and she's made this beautiful mobile with like rain clouds and all crocheted and knit. And you should check out Watson and Loki, her Instagram page. It's she's got some great stuff. Moving back to the man of the hour here. I'm trying to find my there it is, above average Scotch ale. So as I said before, we were going for an Oktoberfest because that's your style.
Yeah.
Right. That's the style that Joseph Scott likes. And then Scotch ale for obviously your name.
Yeah.
Joseph Scott. And then I threw a little twist. So Pilsner malt, Vienna malt, Munich malt are all what would be used in an Oktoberfest beer. Pilsner, you used to Pilsner the beer, but there's also a grain that's called that. Vienna obviously is very close to Germany. Munich, is where Oktoberfest is. I also included Victory malt. And now two things. One, Victory, obviously above average. Racks up, Joseph Scott racks up the victories, but also because Victory malt has like a very distinct taste. I think that's also what made the color a little bit darker than a true Martin, so I missed it, but I think the taste really makes it worth it.
Yeah, no, it definitely does.
So maybe I can use a little bit less. If I pull back on the Victory malts, I might be able to get the color right. We'll see.
But the color is like almost there. Besides that, like when we went to, I remember one of the things they were talking about at the Sam Adler's brewery tour. You should be able to see your fingers behind the beer, but this one's a little bit cloudier, and you can't do that.
Yeah, so cloudiness is part of it, and I just think that it's just a little bit too dark, and then so we for color they use what's known as the Lovabond Scale. All these Pilsner malts, these like light malts are less than 10. Victory malt's almost 30 Lovabonds, and so that sort of tilts that color a little bit darker. like Guinness for comparison is like 50 or 60 or whatever that is, so that's dark. And then so the hops are the noble hops, like I said, the Hallertau and the Tetnig, and then I added honey. And then so honey is a couple of reasons. One is because it's golden color. Two, it's sort of a cheat for brewers, right? Like I said, it's difficulty for brewing is to convert malt starch into sugars, and then by just having honey, you have like this like quick sugar supply. Whereas, you know, if you don't get enough of the sugar that you need, you can just sort of dump the honey.
Yeah, it's funny, when I just took another sip, I could actually like kind of like taste the honey in it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even though it's not like dominant, you can still taste, and it's smooth just like honey too.
Yeah, and I think it really does a lot for the taste. And then the other thing is that, you know, honey's gold, right? Like your
like
belts.
my trunks.
Yeah, yes, and yes, it's your primary color as well. I don't know if you noticed the bottle caps are blue too.
Yeah, I don't think they noticed the caps. That's why he picked the blue color, because of my blue trunks.
Right. So the secondary, that's the secondary color that's of Joseph Scott. And then mead is like in a very Scottish tradition. So you know,
and it's a staple at the. If you've ever been to the New York Renaissance Festival, it's one of the staples, and it's one of the things when I make the like beer cocktail, I always top it off with mead with the either Oktoberfest or Sam Adams cherry weed and Boston Lager or some other different ones I could throw in there, and then you just top it off with mead, and it's always good.
Yeah. So with all that together, I think that you get between the style that is your favorite, the Victory malt, which is just like a little bit of detail. The honey's a little bit of detail. The Scotch ale's a little bit of detail, and you start to build a Joseph Scott beer that really wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense for any other wrestler to have this beer, to take this recipe and try to like make it your own. Like, it's truly something that is for Joseph Scott and nobody else, and that's really what my brand is about. Like, that's what I want Backstory Brewing to be. Yeah,
and you made a similar beer for the nutmeg. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So anyone who's a fan of U.S. soccer, so Tobin Heath is one of my favorites. So probably my favorites of the USWNT. And so I made a Heath Ale, and so I spiced it with nutmeg because that is her signature move. A lot of people do what's known as a nutmeg, is where you kick the ball, an attacker will kick the ball between a defender's legs and then pass the defender that way. So a lot of soccer players do that, but she's like the queen of it. Like, she'll do double nutmeg. She's mastered the craft. So I created a toffee flavored beer. It's a brown ale. She's a brunette. I was gonna try to match the color of her hair, but my lawyers told me that probably wouldn't pass well. It's interesting from a brewer's perspective to try to. Yeah, so it was toffee flavored, like the Heath bar, and then I added chocolate malt, so it had this chocolate and toffee flavor, which is reminiscent of the Heath bar, and then I added a little bit of nutmeg at the end. So that is, again, that wouldn't be a Rapinoe beer, that wouldn't be an Alex Morgan beer. It's only for Tobin Heath.
Yeah.
And so that's that's what I tried to do. You know, like when I make a beer, it's not like, oh, this is a kick-ass beer that you can put your name on and it'll sell. It's no, this beer has like, it's part of your character. Like, it's taking elements that make sense only
like
to you.
What I like about your idea behind Backstory Brewing, not only is it a beer, but it has a story behind it, and that's the reason why you named the company too.
Yeah, and you're like, and let's say that this was at a bar. I forget how quickly you drink.
It's okay. You're talking the most too.
Mm-hmm. But like, if I were to get this at a bar, if you liked it, you know, if this just had any name, it was like Joseph Scott's beer, and like you just had it, and you're just like, oh yeah, like I'm not into wrestling. This guy's name, it was like Bob or something. But like, if you hear like, oh yeah, he's like he comes in with a kilt. So it's got Scotch ale.
Yeah.
And then it's got honey because of the mead. And, like, he's got this, like, it's going for the Oktoberfest. Now, suddenly you build a story about it. You're not only just drinking something that's enjoyable, you
kind of connect with it.
Exactly. You get a connection
level.
to that beer, and then now it's like you're meeting an old friend when you order it again. You know, that's cool to me. And
Yeah,
that's
definitely. No, I like that. Don't know where I was going to go from there. I think we about covered everything. Unless you got something.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, no, I mean, I went with what I thought went wrong, which was primarily the color. I do like the fact that that the head stays. It's a little dimmer now, obviously, but after 30 minutes?
Yeah. It's still there.
Yeah, it's still present, and that is due to the protein. Actually, we didn't talk that much about the whey protein.
Yeah, let's talk about it more.
Yeah, so it's got 5 grams of whey protein in addition to whatever is in the beer itself. Yeah, so it's this is like perfect for like yard work or like if you're doing chores or something like that, and
definitely.
like, you know, something that you wouldn't quite call a workout, or you're not sweating enough that you need to go for the water bottle. Like, if you're in the mood for a beer, but you also want to like say like, yeah, let's give my muscles a little bit of candy to for a good job. I think that it's a really good beer for that, and it's very crushable too. Like it doesn't, you know, you can drink it quickly.
Yeah, and is that what you mean by crushable? Like you can just down it, chug it.
Yeah. Crushable means like there's nothing stopping you from keeping from just taking it in. So
yeah,
like
I think like the Belgian yesterday had a problem with that. Like it was a little strong for my liking.
Eminently uncrushable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was one of those beers you just gotta leave on the table and sip at it. It's one of those beers you want to nurse.
Yeah, it's 9%, so that's...
Yeah. Oh, I was about to, he makes
That's
some
safe to
high
say.
percentage alcohol in his beers. Like, what's the highest level you've been? This is what is this is a 5.6 or a 5?
This is around 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is around a 6. I figured, you know, above average.
Yeah.
Right, I was going... Oh, yeah, so that's another, like...
That's another thing.
You know, and that's... So it's always fun that, like, you have these Easter eggs that
Yeah.
sort of make it, you know, like a 5% is an average beer, so I decided to go 5.5 to 6 and make it a little above average, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
So, that's the... We were talking about...
Your highest percentage.
highest
alcohol,
percent.
yeah.
9% for beer was the highest percentage. I tried to make a 10% cider.
Was that like the cider you made for
St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day?
Oh.
Liquid fire.
Yeah.
Oh my god! If you're ever joining us for St. Patrick's Day, don't drink the beer. I mean, do drink the beer if you want to get messed up, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That was...
blackout drunk.
That was, well, also I didn't know what I know now as a brewer. I realized now that if you just try to, like, slam on the alcohol, the yeast will eventually get stressed out. And then when it gets stressed out, it starts producing, like, when we stress out, we sweat, and we start producing these, like, terrible odors.
So what, it produces more alcohol?
No, it produces alcohols, and it produces, sometimes they'll produce... like good esters and ketones, and then sometimes it'll produce furans, and these are all organic chemicals that just leave this like funky taste. So when you say like, you know, the difference between using a Scotch ale and then Oktoberfest beer uses a lager ale, that makes a subtle difference. I still think that the grains really primarily drive the taste, but selecting your ale and then selecting your yeast and keeping that yeast at the proper temperature goes a long way in producing those subtle differences in flavors. Like some will know like fruitier flavors, like some will have like an off taste of bananas if you put it into, which sounds awesome but is not really what I'm going for.
Like, banana.
Yeah, I mean, and some beer styles you'll want that, but not for this one.
Yeah.
You know, this one I'm going for. I was going for a Scotch ale, and that flavor profile, if you do it right, is better than if you do it wrong.
Yeah.
So I didn't know any of that. I just was going for alcohol, and that's part of the reason why. Like my brother called it like a turpentine taste, which is never what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was furans. It was this chemical that basically the yeast signal to say, oh man, this is a little bit much.
Yeah.
Like I'm partying a little bit too hard.
Have you ever thought about getting into liquor, or you just want to stick with beer? And
Well, distilling, I would want to learn how to distill. If I start tomorrow, it'll be another 10 years before I can, I can produce something that's worth value. Like, it is the next step, and it is from what I understand, it's a totally different mindset. You're talking about, it's really all about like letting nature take its course.
Yeah.
But like for any kind of distilling, like you're boiling away things, and it's about the process itself. And then if you don't hit your temperatures, you might make someone go blind, right? Because you're producing methanol. You're selecting methanol instead of what I remember is that you boil something off, and then those are the heads, the hearts, and then the tails. And you want the heart. You don't want the heads, because that's like the methanol. And then the heart is where you'll get the ethanol, which is what we drink. That's the alcohol we drink. And then like the bottom has like isopropyl alcohol, which you don't want to drink that either. So you just sort of, and then like all the residue and whatever. So it's really like the process is way more important than just like letting nature take its course. For the beers, I like giving the yeast a comfortable environment, and then just like letting it set and like produce something for me, and then sort of like a hands-off
yeast
approach.
You do you.
Yeah it's like a big question about like how much you want to tamper with something once it's brewing, and I kind of compare it to like an open wound.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna open up that canister and like look into a live batch, like if you need to make a change, don't be afraid to just kind of go in and do it, but like wash your hands. Don't
especially now.
Of all times, that was a big thing. They were all the brewers were just like, oh yeah, we use this sanitizing agent. It's like, that's for bacteria, not viruses. You know what? I'm gonna drink it anyway. Whatever. So
it is what it is.
Yeah. But so you sort of have this hands-off approach for beer. And then when you distill, it's very not hands-off. It's very like you have to be in control, and you have to drive this liquor to where you need it to be. Yeah. And so it's a very different mindset.
I'm out of beer, and I want another one. So I think we'll go close out soon. You got anything coming up, Paul?
Well, I've Hipster Kangaroo is going to be out in the middle of April. I've got people asking me. It's nice. It's a nice thing, but it's also a little bit of stress. I've got commissions for the raspberry sour Hellscape
Stephanie.
2020. Yep.
If you're watching.
Yep. We it's in the back of my head. And I'm out of Belgian Chapelle, so I gotta make more of those. So it's good, but it's also it is work, but it is work that I very much enjoy.